everyone. We're here again with our Becoming Witch interviews. And today I'm going to be talking with Josie.
Hi.
So, as we all know, these interviews are interviews with individuals who identify with witch. So they are a witch by their own definition. And we're talking about transitions and periods of stagnation within our life and within our witchcraft. So we're going to be exploring that with Josie as well. So to sort of set the stage for everyone, when did you first start being interested in witchcraft, and sort of what drew you to study and research about it to find out what it was?
At first, my mother was sick, and I was interested in color magic, and I wanted to find a way to call on healing energy to make her better. And it worked a little bit at first, but not really. But she ended up having an operation that made her better.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just I guess I could blame Halloween, because every Halloween, every year I wanted to be a witch my entire childhood until
Really?
now. It's so funny, but I don't know. I just, ever since I was like 4 or 5 years old, I felt a spiritual energy watching over me, telling me that I'm going to have a spiritual and enchanting life. I didn't have words for those, but I just knew that that's what it meant. That's what it was telling me. And it's just, I've had an interest in it ever since childhood.
So what sort, was your mom a witch, or did you know anybody that identified as witch or called themselves a witch at the time?
I knew that she studied it while she was in high school, and
Okay.
she did a project on it.
Oh, wow.
And her mother was interested in it. Her mother had a Ouija board, and there's a lot of paranormal activity in her house, and she was just very interested in it, and was a very, I don't know, colorful person.
This is your mother, the one that was ill?
Yeah,
Okay.
she's my adopted mother, but she's a
Oh,
mother I
okay.
was raised with.
You were raised as what?
Christian.
Christian. Oh, Christian. Okay. So, and how old were you when your mom got sick?
I was in my early 20s.
Okay. So all the way up till that time, you were Christian?
Um, yeah, up to that time, I couldn't fight my curiosity. I kept on doing a lot of research online and
Right.
explored a lot of different things. And, there are some websites that say you're not a witch unless you're initiated into a coven. And so, every information source is different.
It sure
And
is, right?
there are all types of witchcraft all around the world. But yeah, so yeah, it was up till then. I practiced in secret.
Okay, because that was my next question. So, so your mom gets sick or needs surgery or whatever is happening with your mom, an illness. You start looking into color magic to help heal her or to help
Yeah.
do whatever you can to ease
Mm-hmm.
her illness. She
Yeah.
ends up having the surgery. She gets
Mm-hmm.
better. Now, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Do you still continue to study or practice? And did you actually, oh, you said you did a spell and you think it kind of helped? Yeah.
It kind of helped. But then later on, like, I would have an interest in Reiki.
Okay.
And there were periods in my life where I was convinced that I could pick up on angels and communicate with them, which they did give me a lot of divine healing. And I was interested in Reiki. We used to take regular yearly trips to Mount Rainier and the ocean. And sometimes the weather was really cloudy, and I was wondering if I could use Reiki to clear the clouds. And like over a period of time, I was succeeding in clearing clouds by asking the angels to do it. But it was very enchanting. At first, I didn't believe it was me, but then the moment I stopped asking the angels to clear it, the more clouds came in. And I'm like, oh, wow, maybe I should keep praying this out. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's just like, it's still important to test every entity that you work with.
Right.
But there have been instances where they gave me predictions that were accurate while I was practicing in secret and helped me with the ability to control weather. But I haven't been able to do it since because I fell into a depression after my mom died.
Okay, so we're coming up to, so here you have your mom had surgery, she's feeling better. Now you're delving into other things like Reiki and all these different avenues that we can all sort of categorize under magic, even if some of them may not necessarily be strictly witchcraft, they can still be
Right.
part of your witchcraft, right?
Right.
So when is it that was it in the early days or was it later that you adopted the title, you identified yourself as witch? Because you did mention that some websites say you have to be initiated. So did you identify as witch then, or was it later that you adopted the label for yourself?
I want to say I feel like I adopted it because, like, I feel like I have to be initiated, but I'm not entirely sure if that's true.
Personally, I am of the belief that you know if you're witch, and you know if that label fits you. Because I have met some individuals who practice magic and practice magic successfully, but the way that they do it, they may not label it witchcraft, so they may not use the label witch because maybe they're not doing spells, but they're doing, manifestation. I honestly think the whole idea of law of attraction and manifesting with the power of law of attraction is definitely a form of magic, but I don't know if I necessarily would call them witches unless they called themselves witches. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
It really depends on the individual, in my belief.
Yeah.
So for you, you are kind of, do you feel you're witch? Would you use that word to describe yourself?
Yeah. I feel like it's the right term for me.
Okay.
It's a fulfilling journey. It's just, it's fascinating. It's mysterious. It's spiritually fulfilling and can be very beneficial.
So when we look at the early days in your 20s, when you were first, studying and researching and stuff, what was the majority of things or the majority of concepts or magic or witchcraft that you spent the most time delving into?
I would delve into crystals.
Okay.
And the first time that I grabbed clear quartz beads and wire weaved them on a copper rod, I felt this joyful energy come over me. It was so strong. I was crying. It was just so beautiful. And it was just so real and magical. One of my first-hand experiences with crystal magic. And then I just, in Mount Rainier, they have those little crystal shops. It's not a crystal shop, but it's just like, it's a shop that has, like geodes and little collections of tumbled stones, just because, it's a place where people mine and that's where they sell their minerals. And so I would up acting like I was interested in it, but didn't tell my mother I was using it for magic. So it was just like a discreet way of practicing it in secret. But yeah, it's just I was very drawn to crystals for the most part, and I explored spellsofmagic.com that has all the
yeah.
And I explored YouTube channels. As a matter of fact, I did an incantation from one of your spells for the mental health tea.
Oh, nice.
And
Yes.
I used it over lumbus bread with the filling of lemon dandelion hand pies from Green Witch, and I used that for incantation. And I feel like I did before my trauma occurred in my life. I feel all brand new. It's a very effective spell, and I want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so happy that I could help in some little way, because clearly it's your own witchy power, connecting with that really manifested the changes that you wanted to make. But I'm glad I had even just a little part of that, Josie. Oh, thank you for letting me know. It's always great to hear back from people that I'm able to help. So the transition that you experienced. So here you are, after your mom's surgery, you're looking at Reiki, you're working with crystals, you're connecting, you're researching, you're studying, you're practicing whatever you're practicing. And then there's something that occurs for you, a transition that happens. Can you talk to us about what this transition was for you?
The transition was a little bit confusing because I just have a habit of internalizing negativity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I automatically internalized what the Bible says about witchcraft. I had extremely tremendous amount of guilt, but I have a belief that you have to fulfill your destiny, that in which it satisfies your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You can't escape that. There's a reason why God gave us freedom of choice, and God still loves us. But on top of that, witchcraft is a very individualistic journey.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to learn to embrace that. It can be a very long journey of self-discovery. You can't escape that. You can't fight what you identify yourself as.
So with all this internalizing, internalizing the negativity and the guilt, is this around the time that your mother died? Was that also part of that? It was.
Yes. After she died, I went to Shipwreck Beads in Lacey, Washington. It's a place where it has almost every crystal you could ever imagine in crystal beads, and I would make crystal rosaries out of amethyst or certain type of stones. And when I entered that store, I just felt this guilt and shame about me, like I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to. And the clerk was approaching me whatever you're doing, it's fine, it's okay. I mean, it was meant to be.
So as you experienced the transition, as you were filled with this guilt and this sorrow, I'm sure you were grieving for your mom. Did your practice stop? Did you have moments where you were afraid to continue? Did you stop studying? Did you ever have that? Or did you just work through that while you were still studying and practicing?
I didn't stop until I moved in with my brother, who is a devout Christian. Yes. And so I felt even more guilt and shame because I was in his household. And so I felt the need to run to his church, to attend their church, to please them in return for giving me a place to stay, because I was getting out of a toxic relationship. So, that was my period of stopping, was moving into my brother's place. I think that was problematic for my journey because then I developed even deeper depression.
Right.
I got married and moved into our own place in Arizona. And I just recently started back up again. And I feel like it's helped my depression.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine. I mean, I mean, the whole idea of, going through grief, feeling, so you have grief and all that it entails, all those stages of grief.
Mhm.
Then you have guilt.
Mhm.
Being brought up Christian, I can relate of the guilt that you carry when you're not doing what you've been told to do all those years that you were Christian. And oh my gosh, God is going to hate me. He doesn't love me anymore. You're dealing with all that. And then you're living with someone who is devout Christian, and now you're afraid of exploring what you feel called to do for
Mhm.
fear of how this person who is helping you, who is giving you a place to live, you can't, bite the hands that's feeding you, so to speak, because
Yeah.
then you'll have totally nothing. That's got to be a difficult time. And I can definitely see why, having to sort of not practice, especially if it's going to be against, their beliefs. But the freedom you must have had moving into your own place, the feeling
Yes.
of sort of relief and uh, letting go of any restraints. And I imagine that your partner, your significant other, is aware of your beliefs and is supportive
Yes.
with what you do.
Oh, yes. I can be authentic with him, and it is so liberating. It is so liberating. It's a breath of fresh air, and it's just, I feel like it has helped my depression a lot to pursue what I feel passionate about. Yeah, I'm much happier now.
Right. So for you, I imagine then coming out of that stagnation, coming out of the time where you couldn't practice or you felt like you weren't able to practice, was more about just, finding your own place. Once you had your own place, it was like, I'm getting the feeling that it was like a burst of, yes, now I can do what I want to do kind of thing. It's like all this pent up need
Yes.
and if feelings to want to express yourself in this way and be who you're meant to be, really embrace the witch within. It was just a matter of
Mhm.
having this space to do so. How long did you have to live with your brother? How long were you dealing with all the sort of boundaries that you had? How long was that period of time?
Less than a year,
Oh,
surprisingly.
good.
My sister and I got married very quickly. Him and I were seeing each other for 6 months, and then we got married in June 2018.
So a year, that's not too bad. I mean, it's long enough. I lived with my very devout Christian mom and dad with my two kids for a year, and it's long enough. But yeah, it's very liberating to find your own space. So tell me, what does your practice, which is your witchcraft now? What is the majority of what you do now? Are you still interested in the crystals? Is it still color magic? Is it still Reiki? Or are you exploring other things and doing other things?
I feel like I'm doing a little bit of everything on top of incorporating Lord of the Rings themes, which is the reason why I made Lembas bread, the bread that Frodo and Sam ate on the way to Mordor. Yeah, I can pick up on energies that come in the form of certain characters in movies, in books. Galadriel has been approaching me, or an entity in her form has been approaching me and has been wanting to work with me. And I just recently did a spell to invoke her energy, and I asked her to align me with my life's purpose, and I feel like it was more effective. I do feng shui, I do crystals, I do potions, little kitchen witchery, but on top of that, I'm trying to incorporate more Lord of the Rings themed magic.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a whole form of magic, pop culture magic that really does embrace the idea of modern day cultural symbolisms and characters and stories and current mythologies that you're able to work into your magic, which makes perfect sense to me if we really strip everything down to just energy. And I believe, being spirits will approach us in a way that is more accepting, light beings, or, spirits of our beloved dead, or just, spirit guides, or there's so many different entities out there that truly have no physical form, and their energy will resonate with us in certain ways that are more acceptable to us. That whole idea, though, that these characters have this certain energy that we can tap into and use within our craft, I think is very valuable. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So, what does, if we were to look at if we were to spy on you and see what sort of practice you have, what would a typical day be like for you right now, in your own space, practicing your own magic? Do you have a daily practice, or is it more spontaneous and intuitive? Are your spells or your magical workings, are they ritualistic, or are they more intuitive? What is it that you do?
It's more spontaneous and intuitive. And then there are times when it's ritualistic. I do a lot of money spells, and they have been manifesting pretty well.
Great.
Yeah, so that it's very beneficial financially. But I know that if I could get aligned with my life's purpose, that could probably attract even more abundance.
Right.
Which is another reason why nobody should ever fight what their intuition is pulling them to.
Yeah. And do you follow like the wheel of the year? Do you have something, or are there certain times or certain spells or certain things that you do that are always ritualistic?
The money spells for sure.
Okay.
I really try to use correspondences, but
Nice.
I've learned that, spells don't always have to be limited to correspondences.
Right.
But they can be very helpful.
Right.
There's an extra boost.
Right.
In a ritual.
I was only asking about that because I know in speaking with other witches, there are some witches that generally their witchcraft is very spontaneous, but they always celebrate in a very ritualistic way on, I don't know, Beltane, or they are very ritualistic on Samhain, on Halloween. They do this one thing, they always do it. Or for some witches, it's, every full moon, I do a ritualistic type thing, but every other day of the month, I'm just spontaneous. I was wondering if that was something that, resonates with you, or that's something you tend to do, or is it just all very spontaneous for you?
I think it's more intuitive. But yeah, the first time I did a luck spell during a full moon was very effective. It was my first time working with the moon, and I'm like, oh shit, this really works. Pardon my language. It really works. I'm like, okay, maybe I should use the moon correspondences into my work.
Are you still using a lot of stones? Because you said that was a really big part of your practice at the beginning. Yeah.
Yes. I have 2 crystal balls. I have a lot of chip beads. I have all sorts of crystals. There's nobody can say I'm just going to get one crystal from the crystal shop, right? Yeah.
So if we look at, or if you were to talk to other witches, or you are basically through this interview, and someone stumbles upon our video and they are going through transition, or they're dealing with a life experience that's really bringing them to stagnation, or they find that they're in a situation where they just can't practice because where they're living, or what is happening within their life, what sort of advice would you give them?
Well, magic is all around you, no matter what. You just can't fight the pull of your intuition, because it's just more fulfilling that way. There is a yearning in our soul that we have to satisfy, and you have a choice to fulfill it with negative things or positive things. And this is actually a positive way to fulfill it.
That's good. That's good. I definitely, obviously, I'm sure you're there's an encouragement for people not to give up, because as you have showed, you ended up living with your brother for a year, but then there was an end, and you were able to, you hung in there and were able to express yourself and really practice after.
They're not alone. You are not alone.
Exactly. There's plenty of us witches out here. I mean, I know we're going to put the information wherever Josie feels comfortable giving us links. So I'll make sure that information is in the information section of the video. And you can always reach out to me as well. You can find me anywhere. So thank you, Josie, for talking with me today and sharing your experience. I'm sure others will find it helpful.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. And remember, I love you. Mwah. Blessed be everyone. See you again soon.
Bye.